I guess given that you're on the internet at all, you probably recognize this guy.
Put the money in the bag! Put it in!
You're facing the wrong way, sir.
We had the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, Tom Kenny, on the line.
Hi, I'm Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, and you're listening to Q with Tom Power.
Did not disappoint. Funny, weird, hilarious.
His name's Tom Kenny. He's got a solid 35 minutes. Wonderful. Young, fresh, lot of energy.
Everything you'd ever want from this guy, including a pretty revealing conversation about, losing the man who created SpongeBob and how he's sort of always in their hearts on that weird, surreal, beautiful show. Have a look. Tom, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Good. Just adjusting the height of my desk. So, sorry, I'm a little fuzzy around the edges, but yeah.
I really love the movie. I got to watch it. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Cool. So if it leaks before the premiere day, we'll know who the culprit is.
Yeah, I got one of those meta glasses, that records everything, and I wore them in there, and I'm going to take you guys down from the inside. That's the plan.
I knew those weren't just for show. Yeah. So I'm glad you liked the movie. We really had a great time making it. Cliche as that sounds, and trite as that sounds, we had a blast making it. It was really, really fun. Which I know that even people that didn't have fun making a movie say that when they're doing PR for the movie, but I assure you I'm sincere.
The Flying Dutchman? The most pants-wettingly scariest ghost to ever roam the high seas? Oh, my lucky brick.
What did you like about the story, I wonder? I found the story really interesting because, in addition to being this absurd, hilarious movie, it's also about a lot of things. I mean, so for people who haven't seen it yet, and I hope you do go see it, SpongeBob is getting a little bit taller. He's trying to ride a roller coaster. He finally gets near the roller coaster. He's afraid. I'm not going to spoil anything. Has a really hard time admitting that he's afraid. Through a bunch of false bravado, ends up being on an underworld quest to free a pirate's curse. But there's a lot there too. What did you like about the story when you first found out about it?
Wow, that was very deft. That was JEI, just enough information. That was perfect. Not TMI. I loved it. I have a great time on SpongeBob anytime we're doing it. It's this kind of fun job 26 years in. And since it's the only job that I ever really, really wanted since I was a little kid, there's no bad days when you're doing something you love. Another cliche that happens to be true. And then sometimes you get to switch it up. Some of the episodes are very small and about very banal things. SpongeBob will spend 11 minutes trying to tie his shoe or something like that. And then when you expand that to feature length, it's a little bit more of a conundrum because things that work in 11-minute increments are often hard to spin into 90-minute increments. The SpongeBob movies, I think they did a really fabulous job of expanding it and making it bigger and more bombastic, which also opens the door for a lot of graphic things that we could never do on the TV show. But you still have to keep that sense of just dumb banality that is SpongeBob. And I think, this movie does a great job of that. Part of it is that it was conceived and written by a guy named Derek Dryman, who did the first SpongeBob movie in 2004, which is highly regarded by people of a certain age. And then he went away for a little while. He did other things. He worked at Sony for a while. He directed, Hotel Transylvania movies, things like that. And then he was ready to come back to SpongeBob. He had this idea for a bigger story, something that he felt had not been plumbed before. And Nickelodeon went for it. They put it on the fast track from a potential streaming Netflix movie to a big screen adventure. And then we were off to the races. And yeah, I've seen the movie twice, and I really, really like it. I think it's really fun. And I've seen it once with an audience full of kids and families, and it's great to hear the laughs, because humor, comedy, as you know, is so subjective that it's interesting to see what people laugh the hardest at. And it's not always what you think is the funniest things.
If I can just put on my monocle for a second here, I was thinking about how much I enjoy like early Marx Brothers movies versus later Marx Brothers movies, and I love early Marx Brothers movies because they're just anarchic, as they say. They're just like wild and silly, and then the later ones have a plot and there's serious, sad moments. And in the same way that I think like an early Marx Brothers movie like Duck Soup, which is like only jokes, only anarchy. Still makes
Leo
me
McCarey at the helm.
makes me feel like
Yeah.
it makes me think about war. It makes me think about totalitarianism. Makes me think about those things, but only through laughs. Only through laughs. I thought about that when I was watching SpongeBob as well. I was like, this made me think about fear, and this made me think about like being kind to one another, and it made me think about forgiveness without the Full House strings needing to come on in the background and SpongeBob needing to say, Patrick,
In a world.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yes.
think there's something beautiful about that, about getting that stuff in there.
Yes.
You know.
But in trying to hide from a roller coaster, will he find himself?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right about that stuff. I mean, SpongeBob and cartoons, both print and animated, have always dealt with real things in broad strokes. It's caricature, right? So, SpongeBob, he is, and all the people in SpongeBob's world, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, the Flying Dutchman, Mr. Krabs, they are real characters to me and to us who play them. And I think to a lot of the audience too, talking to people. And it's just a different planet and different ground rules, but you have to play them as real. Like you can't be laughing up your sleeve at them. It's, and SpongeBob does feel fear and doubt and despair. Like one thing I notice is that people will often go, oh, you know what the great thing about SpongeBob is that he's never depressed. He's always wide-eyed optimist. And that's really not true. SpongeBob gets his legs kicked out from under him a lot on the show and just loses it, and he's just bereft, But then he then he comes back because he has this irrepressible spirit. So I think it's more irrepressibility than optimism that makes that people respond to with him. Although he does have a lot of optimism as well. But yeah, you're right. I mean, fear, trying to be something you're not. And one thing that struck me while I was watching it the second time, the previous time I watched it just a couple weeks ago, with an audience at the AFI Festival in LA, which was the big world premiere of it for the public. It was also very much a father-son story where, Mr. Krabs is kind of, SpongeBob's somewhat father figure and his benefactor, and SpongeBob works at his restaurant and all that. But then this new guy comes along who's promising nothing but fun, like the fun stepdad. I'm going to let you eat candy all weekend, and no vegetables in my house. And so SpongeBob responds to that like, wow, this new guy's a little more fun than this fuddy-duddy old guy that's been raising me. So that's in there too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I want to play something, though. This is not from the new movie at all. I just want you to take a listen to this.
You're going to the Krusty Krab and get that job!
I can't, don't you see? I'm not good enough.
Whose first words were, may I take your order?
Mine were.
Who made a spatula out of toothpicks and woodchuck?
I did.
Who's a big yellow cube with holes?
I am.
Who's ready?
I'm ready.
Who's ready?
I'm ready.
Who's ready?
I'm ready.
Tom, do you recognize that scene?
That is the very first episode. So all that, Stephen Hillenburg had all that in there from the get-go. I haven't heard or seen that in many years. But
What goes through your head when you hear that?
to be honest, I go, wow, that was the first episode. But I don't think that was a quarter century ago in the last episode. It's just like, oh, yeah, that was early days of this thing that I did today. And that we have a movie coming out on Friday. Like, SpongeBob has never really left my life since that time. So you don't really notice time passing. And cartoon characters don't change. I
Yeah.
definitely don't look the same as I did in 1999, but SpongeBob does. You kind of don't notice time passing. Like with a kid, you go, wow, my once 4-year-old has a beard now. But with SpongeBob, he looks exactly the same. So my thought is just wow, that's funny, and I've had a great time doing this, and I'm still allowed to do it, and the check's actually clear.
What did Stephen Hillenburg tell you about the show when he first told you about it? Like, what was it that what do you remember him telling you about it?
Oh, I remember it very well. He had me go to his apartment in Los Angeles, and he and I had met on an earlier Nickelodeon show called Rocko's Modern Life.
Yeah, I loved
It was
Rocko's
created-
Modern Life, by the way.
Oh, it's a very subversive show, kind of like SpongeBob, and it was created by a guy named Joe Murray, who gave Steve his first job in animation and me my first job in animation. And Steve and I just hit it off on that show. Steve was the creative director. I was the voice of some of the characters. And then when Steve got ready to pitch his own show, he just remembered me. We had kind of kept in touch, but we weren't super duper bosom buddies, but we always liked each other and kept in touch and enjoyed each other and things. And he just had me come over to his apartment and showed me this pitch, what they call a Bible, that he had with drawings of SpongeBob and even some little watercolor treatments of the buildings and the skyline of Bikini Bottom with the tiki head house that Squidward lives in and the pineapple that SpongeBob lives in and the overturned lobster trap that is the Krusty Krab restaurant. And he just showed me all that and just told me about the characters and said, he's half a boy and half a man. He's part child, part grown up. He kind of exists in a grown up world where he goes to work and has a job and, you know, has a pet that's his that he cares for. But he's also a little kid. Him and his friend hold hands and skip around the neighborhood too. And they go to school, they go to school and things like that. He's kind of everything everywhere all at once. And he explained it so well that I felt like I didn't really have to work hard at all to connect the dots because he just put it all out there so clearly.
It's funny with big hit TV shows and big hit animated shows. It's different than music. Like, I think when I would often talk to a musician and I would be able to, what I want to find out is like, when was the moment that they knew this thing had taken off? And it's always like, I was at the grocery store and the song played there, or I was stuck in traffic, and I had the radio on and the person next to me was listening to my own song. And I realized, wow, can you name a moment like that for you with SpongeBob? Because it really did take off. Is there an equivalent of that in your life when you realized, oh, SpongeBob, this has gotten pretty big?
Yeah, it might have been slightly more incremental than what you're talking about, but yeah, and also it's funny, like we both know a lot of musicians and stuff like that, songwriters, and a lot of times for them it's the song they didn't expect to be the hit is the one that takes off. Wow, that song? Wow, I thought this one would be the one everybody was playing. But with SpongeBob, I always knew that it was good. I didn't know that it would hit so hard and so deeply with people, but I did know that before it aired, I had the pilot that Steve Nickelodeon had given me on a VHS tape, and I showed it to people in my family, men who are not steeped in cartoons like me, and they were like, wow, this really has something. That has something. There's something there. And they're not even prognosticators or even remotely in show business. And I was like, And then it took the show a little while to get rolling. I guess Seinfeld has a similar trajectory, right? Where it's like, oh, wow. And then people like this. People like this a lot. And for me, it was when I started to see merch, when I started to see, back when there were toy stores, backpacks in Toys R Us and plush toys, T-shirts. Those are the first things they make because they're the easiest to manufacture, right? So plush toys, T-shirts, backpacks. I started seeing that stuff like that, and it was like, wow, if the graphic of this character is on stuff and then stores are selling that stuff and people are buying that stuff, that's a real rubric, And then even to this day, I kind of am reassured that SpongeBob is still popular by the number of kids dressed as SpongeBob that come to my house trick-or-treating on Halloween.
And do they know they're coming to your house? And do you do the voice for them? Do you do anything like that?
Usually people don't know. Once in a while they know. Yeah. But they're not dressed as SpongeBob because they're going to SpongeBob's house. They just still like it.
But will you do the voice for them when they come to the door or anything?
Yeah, once in a while. Yeah, I won't say it, but yeah, I will. And it's funny. I'll tell them, nice costume, bro. And they'll go, whoa, that's pretty good. And I go, oh, almost as good as the real guy? And they'll go, almost as good as the real guy, yeah.
And you're like, you're looking at him right now, and you get a little...
Or they'll go, or they'll go, I give it a 6, But, yeah.
You know, you mentioned you were like people who aren't as steeped in cartoondom as you are. I had a great time getting to know you a little bit to get ready for this interview. And one thing I was reading was that you were a big fan of the old Looney Tunes cartoons. You're a big fan of Mel Blanc, big fan of Jack Mercer. Is that kind of? Were you sitting in front of the TV that probably had cabinets in it? And were you doing voices back then? Were you trying to do Porky Pig and Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, wow. Back when televisions were furniture. Right? It's like they sold it at a furniture store because you could sit on it. Yeah. You could sleep on top of this thing. But you're right. Yes, exactly what you said. Yeah, I was watching it, and I had siblings. I'm the middle of 5, and I was kind of the only one who was hit by those things. I loved the cartoons, and I loved the voices in the cartoons, and I wanted to know how animation got made, not just the voices, but all of it. And there wasn't really a whole lot of writing on that stuff back then, maybe a book or two in your local library, which for me was Syracuse, New York. And then, maybe an article on Chuck Jones or Mel Blanc or something, and, a little one-pager in Time magazine once in a blue moon or something. And I would just gobble that stuff up, pre-internet days, of course, and you couldn't just Google stuff you want to know more about. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And as time went on, I kept thinking about that, and even as I got very into comedy and stand-up and sketch comedy, including all those wonderfully hilarious Canadians on SCTV, which we got in Syracuse on CKWS. Before anybody else was, we could get the Canadian
pre-American SCTV.
Yes,
You got early John Candy SCTV.
So I felt like a hipster.
Right.
I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, there's this new show. I'm like, I've been watching that for a long time. It's on with Mr. Dress Up and Bruno Gerussi. Come on, the Beachcombers.
You're going to get put on the currency in like a matter of minutes. You're going to be, you're going to get the Order of Canada. Hold on, but were you a kid doing the voices? Were you a kid trying to do the Mel Blanc voices or anything? No. Okay.
That's a weird thing. I was not like, look at me. Here's my Bugs Bunny. Here's my Daffy Duck. I never was that kid. I was funny to select trusted friends, but I was, as I always say, people go, you must have been the class clown. And I say, I was the class clown's head writer. Yeah. I would write jokes for the class clown to say, hey, you should, I think this is pretty funny. It's yours if you want. So I really was. That's really how it was. And so then it wasn't until high school that class clown that I wrote for, Bobcat Goldthwait.
The real class clown was Bobcat Goldthwait.
He was. Him and I were the same age, and we knew each other all through from our childhood. And he started saying, he started doing stand-up in his teens, and he said, you should be doing this, and you should be the voice, you should be the vehicle for your own jokes, like you're funny. And so then I started doing that a little bit on a very local Rust Belt town level in Syracuse, and then we formed a sketch group still in high school, Bobcat and I, called the Generic Comics. It was like just total imitation of SCTV and the then brand new SNL, because we were in high school from 1976 to 1980. And then I just realized I loved doing all that. But the cartoon thing was always in the back of my mind, even as I moved to San Francisco and then LA and was making a living as a stand-up and doing, before I trying to get into voiceover the whole time, but having more success as a stand-up, working in clubs. I did David Letterman a couple of times. I did, Conan O'Brien a couple of times as a stand-up, like long before I booked a voiceover. But I always wanted to be the guy booking voiceovers, but I was failing.
But I heard a story that when you were booking stand-up, you would act as your own, you would call people as your agent, as like an agent character, and you would put on a voice for that.
This kid's terrific. This kid is just terrific. You got to see him.
Is this true? You did that?
Yeah. I'd call Comedy Club. I'd cold call him. They go, all right.
His name's Tom Kenny. He's got a solid 35 minutes. Wonderful. Young, fresh, lot of energy. Almost too much energy. But, yeah. So, I found I could extol my virtues better.
You were doing, did he have a did your agent have a name?
Let's see. Did he? I guess he must have. but I can't remember what it was.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah, it was probably just somebody, amalgam of people I went to school
That's
with.
that's
Bernard
kind of a,
Jacobs. This is Bernard Jacobs.
that's kind of a voice gig if you think about it. I mean,
Tom, I realize, and you can't realize, you don't think about these things until it's hindsight when you're looking in a rearview mirror. All that stuff was training ground, all of it. Like, none of it was wasted time. Every dumb band I played in, every stand-up gig, good ones, great ones, and horrific ones, they were all grist for the mill, as they say.
You know what I realized when I was looking at the IMDb for this movie and the other movies? I mean, for people who don't know, the creator of SpongeBob, Steven Hillenburg, and your good friend, he died in 2018. And I noticed that he's credited as a writer for this movie. He still gets credited as an executive producer. He still gets credited for SpongeBob things that came out after him. I don't think I've ever seen something like that before.
I know. It's really cool. That's not my decision, obviously, to make. What level that was made at, I don't know, or what conversations went into that. But I'm just a dumb actor. But I love it. I love it. It's kind of like the opposite of retiring a jersey. Like you're still keeping the jersey up front. You're not retiring the number and hanging it in the Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame. You're just you're keeping that number out there, but you're not giving it to someone else. And you're not putting that uniform on someone else. And Steve was his DNA is such a part of all of it still. And there's not one person that works on the show that doesn't know that to the core of their being. So yeah, I just love it. I think about him literally every day. And the ride that he took me on, because he took a chance on me. I didn't even have to do a second audition, which you always have to do a second and a third and a fourth. No, now you're going to go to producers. Now we're going to play you for the network. And I didn't have to do any of that with SpongeBob. And, the ride that he took me on, he handed me this lottery scratcher that let me connect with multiple generations of people on a really positive level. Because of him, I wrote a song that wound up in a Tony-nominated Broadway show. Because of him, I have a job I don't hate. So yeah, I really owe him. Oh, and also, even within the show, he made me the voice director of the SpongeBob show. And after a bunch of seasons had gone by, he was like, the voice director thing. We need a new voice director, you. And I was like, I've never done that, Steve, and he goes, you'll be good at it. And I go, I don't even know I have an aptitude for that. And it was never an aspiration of mine to do that. And he said, nah, you just give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? And that was very empowering because I was like, yeah, I did stand up for years. Like, I've got rhinoceros skin. Like, if it does, yeah, I said, Steve, if you're not getting what you want, no harm, no foul. The worst case scenario is that I go back to being just the voice of this character that I adore doing and that I share a brain with that we get along, him and I get along great. And so here we are. I just directed a big session today.
What do you miss most about him?
About Steve?
Yeah.
Wow. You're going to make me cry. No, it was, Steve was just a very unusual person. He obviously was very powerful because he created this IP, so he was creative in the network halls or whatever. But he was very unprepossessing, almost Buddha-like. He wasn't a bully. He wasn't a loudmouth. He wasn't a control freak. He would, but he was very strongly opinionated, and he would choose his battles, and then if it was a battle he chose to take on, he would dig in like a mighty oak tree. Like, he could not be moved. And so, but he was also very open-minded and would let the cast play with the lines, and you would ad-lib something, and he'd go, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, keep that in. Just keep going with that. And he was open to suggestions. And once Steve hired you to do a job, any job on the show, and no matter what aspect on the show.
Yeah.
He hired you because he believed in you, and he wouldn't micromanage you. He had no interest in micromanaging. He had no interest in that. So he'd find out he'd make sure he had the right person. He'd install that person, and then he would let you, take your lead. He would also direct you when he had an opinion about it. And that's kind of where a lot of us that still work on the show, Derek Dryman, who wrote and created this movie that we were talking about, he was there. Mark O'Hare, who worked on the movie. And then a lot of people like Nick Jennings, who was a designer. And he's actually the guy that came up with those weird flowers that kind of float in the background of the sky on SpongeBob. Like, there's a guy responsible for that who said, hey, how about this? Yeah. And, we all still work in SpongeBob land. Vince Waller, Mark Ceccarelli that produced the TV show, they're longtime Sponge people. And, of course, the cast is all really the only casualty. And it's kind of amazing, statistically anomalous, I guess, after 30 years almost, is that we lost Steve. And then, a couple other people that worked on the show have passed here and there, but we've been remarkably lucky. But Steve's loss is a big one that continues to resonate, and that we still talk about him all the time. Not like he's there, because like he's here, because that would be crazy. We know he's not here, but you do try to. For me, it's kind of like I inherited. He gave me this trusteeship of this character, and I just want to do right by it. So I want to, within my little, not that an actor has any control over a $1 jillion global IP, but in my little box of SpongeBob sounding like he should be, and being more like being who he should be, I feel like that's my responsibility, and it's which I embrace. I love it.
The thing that when you were just talking about lack of control of it, I was just looking behind you on you have sort of a green screenish thing happening on Zoom, and one of the SpongeBob in the background, the producer Caitlin here pointed that out, is the SpongeBob from the "I'm gonna head out" meme.
My favorite meme.
What goes through your head when you? I feel like SpongeBob is almost even bigger as a meme topic than it is as a TV show these days. It's everywhere. Mm-hmm. What goes through your mind when you see a SpongeBob meme? What goes through your head when you see that?
Well, that's right. Now the reason this background is on my computer at all is that I can't figure out how to take it off.
Okay.
And one of the engineers at Nickelodeon put it on because I was somewhere in some hotel doing a Comic-Con or something, and I had to talk to like a contest winner that was visiting Burbank Studios from Australia or whatever. And I was like in this closet of this hotel, like in an improvised booth, and I didn't want it to look as if I had been kidnapped and was being held hostage, by a gang of criminals. Anyway, memes. Yeah, I love the participatory aspect of that, where somebody will take a still image of SpongeBob and then repurpose it, or Squidward or Patrick, whoever, and repurpose it with a different feeling. This is me when, this expression is me when, or with that SpongeBob, I'm gonna head out. He never said that on the show, but that drawing perfectly encapsulates that thing where you're getting up out of a chair going, and I just love the folk art almost aspect of that. And then there's not very many things that are like that. And part of that, I think, when I put on my Gorillas in the Mist hat, is that maybe SpongeBob seems to be maybe the last big cultural thing that popped right before the internet and took over everything. It kind of predates that whole thing a little bit.
In the early days of like a monoculture, when everyone felt like there were things that everyone could look at. Yeah.
It's one of the last big monoculture things, and I think that people feel more free because of that to play with it and make their own little patchwork quilts out of whatever little squares of it they no pun intended that they find.
Your friend Bill Fagerbakke, who plays Patrick, once said that the moments from SpongeBob that stand out to him are still the small ones. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Can you tell me about one of the small ones, like one little moment, whether it's on screen or off screen, of your time on SpongeBob that you'll never forget, that lodges in your memory?
Wow, that's really amazing. I guess it's not any one moment, but I think the experience that we have as a cast on SpongeBob that most people in itinerant, carny show business don't get. And we're all, we're basically circus people, but this circus has been able to stay in the same town for 26 years. And so to me, the things that are special to me are those little conversations you have in between takes with these people, these humans, not just the voice actors, but the people that work on the show. You've gotten to know them. You know about what's going on with their aging parents or their kids or things like that. And I think that's increasingly rare in a world where in the gig economy where everybody's got 4 jobs and you just kind of flit from job to job hoping for the best and your fingers crossed. I can think of so many super deep, heavy conversations we had that were very useful to me in those times. So it is the quiet moments. The quiet moments are legion.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And
it's pretty weird.
Yeah, it's a beautiful show, man. It's a beautiful movie. It's
Thank you.
so lovely to get the chance to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on it,
Tom. Thanks a lot, and thanks for being such a great interviewer. And I feel like we barely scratched the surface. So we'll be right back with hour 2.